I have decided to call this little presentation, The Spotted Lantern Sky is Falling, because this is something that has gotten a lot of frenzy. This is what the adults look like in case anybody hasn't yet seen them. It's still a little early in the season for the adults, but they'll be coming pretty soon. A little bit about me there at the bottom and 2 websites that you're welcome to visit. I run the company called Eating for the Ecosystem. That is the second link there. The first is our nonprofit branch, which we have just really started getting going with, and then COVID hit, but you know, it is the way it is. That's EFTE-ARE.org. So let's get started. I want to share a little bit about me in case you're wondering why I'm talking about the spotted lanternfly and what experience and skills I might have to actually share something about this. My first career, I was actually an economics professor. I specialized in empirical research, working with data. I know what statistics and data can do. I know what they tell us. I know what they don't. So I have a pretty critical eye for any of the research about the effects of spotted lanternfly and what impact we think it's going to have on the economy, for instance. I have switched gears. I have been running EFTE since fall of 2016. I am a certified arborist. I'm also a climbing arborist. That's what this photo is. I am up in an oak tree in Fairmount Park in this photo. I also happen to be the board president for Fidget, so a little shout out to Fidget there. It's a performing arts organization here in Philly. The main thing is that my goal with everything that we're doing with Eating for the Ecosystem is to bring more eco-friendly practices to caring for plants and to enhance education for all of these sorts of activities, and to get people to feel more comfortable having a better relationship with plants and just strengthening our ecosystem as we do it. I've been dealing with spotted lanternflies, as has Sharon on this call, since 2014. Talk a little bit more about that. I really want to get into what the damage is and what is being done to try to deal with these pests. The bottom line is I care a lot about how people are dealing with the spotted lanternflies. Some things are good, some things I would argue are not so good. This is a current quarantine map just for Pennsylvania. They have been spotted outside of the state, of course, but I'm focusing on PA right now. The little red dot that I added there, that is a place in Berks County called District Township, which is where they were first found in 2014. They were shipped in with stones that were shipped in from Asia. The little green mark is where my parents actually live. This is Long Swamp Township, which the dots could be right next to each other, so they abut each other. There were 6 townships in the original quarantine district, Long Swamp, and then 4 others. So my parents' house, which is where I keep a vegetable garden, it has been dealing with this since 2014, and they are maybe 2 miles, I'm not sure, something like that, from where the sky is falling. We've seen this before. A lot of the hubbub around the spotted lanternfly, it's really quite frenetic, and I'm hoping that we can get people to calm down a little bit. I'll say some more about that. A few quotes just from some of what's been going around about it. There was an economic study that said it could drain Pennsylvania's economy of at least $324 million annually, so of course that's a big deal. This is from Penn State. The feeding damage can lead to death. There's a lot of other stuff that they're saying, but oh my goodness, all your plants are gonna die. According to some of the companies who are trying to sell spotted lanternfly remediation services, this is a really big issue. We have to be on high alert. These insects are so destructive. Frequent property inspections are important. Of course, hire this company to come out and inspect pretty frequently. 2018 marked a devastating year. I love this part. For landscapes across the country. The bug isn't across the country yet, so I'm not really sure how they got to that point, but you know, there it is. Even more unsettling, they attract stinging wasps. We already have stinging wasps, but okay. The last one, lawn fertilizing can get rid of spotted lanternflies. Lanternflies don't live in the grass. They end up down there, but that's just not true. Fertilizing your lawn is not going to get rid of spotted lanternflies. I wish they wouldn't say that. So it is. But let's get real. Let's talk about what they actually do. They are a pest, absolutely. They've been found to feed on at least 70 different plant species, so trees, shrubs, and herbaceous plants. They have piercing and sucking mouth parts. They get into the phloem of the plants. You don't need to know the plant biology unless you really want to. And they suck and feed on the sap. That can lead to lots of holes in the leaves. It can cause some of the leaves to fall off. There aren't as many leaves on a plant. Photosynthesis is going to be reduced. So of course, we know plants need to do photosynthesis to stay alive. So that's certainly an issue. They can create weeping wounds. That's what this photo is here. This is sap bleeding, weeping out of a tree trunk from the spotted lanternflies feeding. If you do see that on your trees, keep an eye out. That's certainly something problematic. The last point here is that they lay eggs all over the place, not just on tree trunks, but also on cement blocks, on metal surfaces, posts, barrels, all kinds of things. So they can be pretty sneaky and hard to find. The good news on that, though, is that most of their eggs are going to be pretty close to the ground, probably about, your head height and lower. They're really ugly. If you're not familiar with honeydew, this is what it looks like on those oak leaves. It's a shiny, sticky substance. They're not the only insect who secrete it. Aphids do as well, for instance. If you're under a tree that has a lot of lanternflies, it might drip on you. That's happened to me. That's really gross. But having a lot of honeydew can lead to sooty mold. That's that black stuff on the grape leaf in that photograph there. That's a problem. Certainly don't want to have any of that. Keep an eye out for it. That said, it's not necessarily going to happen, but it could. So you want to keep an eye out. And the honeydew attracts insects like wasps and ants and bees. If you have a really significant infestation, it could lead to the plant's death. And that is pretty much the strongest language that's out there from all of the authorities who have been studying this insect for, at least 6 years. There are some plants that are certainly more susceptible. So think about grapevines. There's not a lot of, body of the plant. So those are probably the most in danger. Fruit trees can also be a problem, not because the lanternflies eat the fruit, but because they feed on the leaves and stems and trunks of the trees. Apples, in addition to stone fruit, basically. Pine trees apparently are also one of their favorite feeder plants. They like sumac. We all know they like ailanthus, the tree of heaven, and sumac as well. So, but even given all of that damage, Penn State even says, if you think you have spotted lanternflies, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. So I'm really hoping that people panic a little less about this.
You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
So we all got to do that. That phrase is actually from Ice Cube, but I could not find a good clip. He coined the phrase in his song, Check Yourself, but we had to go with Zach Galifianakis instead. All right, so let's check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. What do we actually know? What do the authorities know? What's really going on with these nasty critters? The authorities on spotted lanternfly in the United States. Primarily, a lot of the research is being done at Penn State, the main campus and its satellite campuses. Increasingly, they're including some of the other public universities in Pennsylvania. I know Kutztown, which is in Berks County, is one of those. The Department of Agriculture is really involved. They do things like issue permits to companies like ours who do some transporting of landscape debris where you could have spotted lanternflies in the debris. Of course, the US Department of Ag is involved. A newer kid on the block with this is Cornell. They are doing some really interesting work in some more eco-friendly ways of dealing with the spotted lanternfly. I'm really glad that they are getting involved. Now, what is being done falls into 3 different categories: control work, research, and outreach. So the research is, what is the actual damage, information about the actual pests themselves, and then the impacts of that damage, including economic impacts. Outreach is when they're trying to get everybody to learn what the egg masses look like so we can scrape them off, telling people again and again, don't move firewood, those sorts of things. And then the control work is actually killing the spotted lanternflies and their host plants. So, first question that I want us all to consider is the damage as bad as claimed, or as bad as we hear in the news or our friends might be saying in Facebook or something like that? Is the damage really that bad? What is the damage? And then does the damage that is caused justify the actual control work that is being done right now? So what's the damage? There aren't a lot of studies out about this. They haven't been in the country for really that long. But Penn State, a group of economists at Penn State released a study from December 2019 where they looked at the potential economic impact of the spotted lanternfly. They focused on just a few industries in agriculture and forestry, so logging, and in agriculture, fruits, ornamental plants, vineyards, and they did some surveying of researchers in the area, extension service experts, and some industry folks to get people's opinions about how susceptible different plant species are to a spotted lanternfly. And then they did some fancy economics and came up with some numbers. Worst case scenario, 325 million lost in those 2 industries per year. Worst case overall, if you think about any time we have a change in the economics, it has a ripple effect. We've all been seeing that with COVID already. We know how this works. So thinking about those additional ripple effects across the state, worst case would be $554 million lost per year and 5,000 jobs. So what hasn't really been widely shared, and these are 2 direct quotes from the paper. No specialists rated any vegetable crop as being highly susceptible to spotted lanternfly. So this is important for home growers as well. No vegetable crop has been considered so far to be highly susceptible to spotted lanternfly. It's not clear that spotted lanternfly is going to kill your tomatoes, kill corn, kill those sorts of things. That's important for us to know and keep in mind when we're trying to deal with something that we're just starting to see as that is happening here in Philly in our gardens. There's very limited information on crop-specific SLF damage currently. So there isn't a lot of information out there about what is actually happening. And when I drive up to my vegetable garden, I pass some vineyards in Berks County, Clover Hill, Vinecrest. There's also an orchard right there. And they seem to be doing just fine. Now, I don't know, because they don't have to tell anybody what they've been doing to deal with the spotted lanternfly. I would really love to ask. But those 3 companies all seem to still be doing fine, even though they were very close to ground zero for the spotted lanternfly. Something I also want to just share real quick, whenever someone is doing an economic impact study, the whole point behind it is to show that there's a big economic impact. That's why people are hired to do those sorts of studies. And everything that is considered is a drain. So it's just what is worse for agriculture and forestry in the United States. It's not taking account of those companies who are now able to sell spotted lanternfly remediation services. That's obviously a switch from one thing to another, but that is an increase in economic activity. It's an increase in labor for a different kind of job. It also isn't showing anything about if there were sufficient damages that some people who worked, say, at an orchard were laid off. It doesn't allow for the fact that then they might go work for a company that was dealing with spotted lanternflies. So there is no other economic activity taking the place, even though we know in the real world other things do absolutely happen. I can certainly talk some more about their specific methods if anybody is interested in that, but I will spare you the nerdy econ details for now. Basically, what I want to get across, they are bad, they are annoying, they are really annoying. If you haven't had any land on you yet, you know, just wait. And the adults are the worst if they land on you. They're gross. I don't want to suggest that they're not, and they do damage things. But we don't have good evidence to suggest, and I would hope we would know within the first 6 years if they're really killing a lot of plants in a widespread fashion. So they probably aren't going to kill anything on your property, and they might not even kill anything. That doesn't mean you just let them go and run rampant, but with some reasonable intervention, some eco-friendly intervention, we could still probably be just fine. I also want to highlight real quick this photo here, the leaves you see in the background. This is actually not, those leaves are not from an ailanthus. Those are sumac. One of the easy ways to tell is if there's a little leaflet sticking out of the end. That is a sumac. If it's even and it's just two on the end, then it is probably a tree of heaven. But the spotted lanternflies like both of them quite a bit. So, all right. I'd like to start thinking about now what is being done. Go back to that control work that I said, you know, that they've been putting a lot of money into it. I've been having a little trouble trying to get exact figures, but it's somewhere between $7 and $15 million so far has been given to universities and all sorts of organizations through the Department of Ag and the USDA, through the Farm Bill, to deal with spotted lanternflies. I don't know what the division is. I don't know how much of it is being used to deal with the lanternflies, how much for research, but it's a lot of money so far. So this is from one of the companies offering SLF remediation, and they say their treatment process is the #1 most effective. Their treatment process. Now, what do you think they're talking about here? Well, they are talking about dinotephuron. If you have not heard of it yet, I would like you to familiarize yourself with this. This is a table that's put out from Penn State. Dinotephuron is in those top 3 rows where you see going along the top the toxicity to birds, fish, and bees, and H means it's highly toxic. So both of these chemicals are neonicotinoids. They do kill bees. They are going to be used by professionals now through September. And then you look, the activity against spotted lanternflies, excellent, they kill a ton of them. So they know they kill a ton of them. And then the last column, residual activity. People in the pesticide industry love to see when that's high. A lot of homeowners who hire people for chemical spraying love to see when that's high, because then that means, oh, you spray once and it's a long time till you need to spray again. The problem is that residual activity and ecosystem health are generally opposed. If a toxic substance has a lot of residual activity, that means it sticks around for a while killing stuff. So for any of us who are really into eco-friendly methods, it's actually better if the residual activity is low, if it's poor. That's something we actually want to look at if we want to stay with something organic. Another thing that I find concerning, you might as well, dinotephuron, they don't have enough data to say how toxic it is to birds or fish. And yet, EPA has approved it. I will note, and I have some links that you can go visit if you'd like, the EU has not approved dinotephuron for use. That's true for so many chemicals, right? So the European Union will not allow its use, but it is allowed to be used in the United States. Just something to note. The other chemical here, imidacloprid, you may have heard of. That is the drug of choice for killing Japanese Japanese beetle and emerald ash borer. So those are around. Now, this isn't just professionals using it. Both of these chemicals are available to homeowners. I'm not going to tell you where to get them, but they're out there. So let's get to the real nitty-gritty here and what I really want to talk about. What you should do and what you shouldn't. I love that little squirrel. Don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. Please don't panic. And please don't feed the frenzy. To the extent that we can, trying to just keep ourselves calm, albeit annoyed. Yes, like they're so annoying. Don't use those neonicotinoids. Don't use the imidacloprid and the dinotefuran. I have seen in places that I otherwise really like going to, local hardware stores, really marketing hard for these kinds of chemicals, because homeowners come in and they're like, what can I do to just get rid of this just once and for all, you know? And that's a real problem. So please don't use those. If you aren't familiar with the difference between detergents and soaps, learn a little bit about that. Most of what we are familiar with and use are actually detergents. They have a lot more sudsing activity. They aren't as biodegradable as soaps. I'm a big fan of the Dr. Bronner's line of soaps. Any of you who are campers like me, camp soap is also a biodegradable soap. Much better to use those if you're going to do one of the organic chemical options, which I'll talk about in a minute. Don't spray so much that you damage your plants. Don't do like I did. I killed my own cucumbers because I got too spray crazy with my soap water, and that was my own darn fault. I weakened the cucumbers enough that other insects came in and they got mosaic virus, and then they were gone. And the last one, just don't move firewood. I know camping seems to be a pretty safe activity right now. A number of people are camping, and I still see people moving firewood. We just shouldn't do it. There's too much that's probably living in there. What to do? Try to remain calm. Talk with your neighbors and your friends. Talk with them about what the alternatives are, and try to have fun with it. So in that vein, I want to share a quick video. Now, that looks a little bit fun. You know, I don't know what kind of extension cord he needed to get out there, but there are a lot of ways that you can make this hopefully a little bit more enjoyable. I want to give you a quick primer. If you aren't familiar with the concept of integrated pest management, it's really pretty much all the rage. It's what's being done. It's great. We use it with EFTE. I've been using it for many, many years. It's the right way to go. The thing is, keep in mind that IPM is going to give you increasingly problematic interventions. So if you stay in the first few steps, you're going to be better for the environment. But the end of IPM is always something really nasty anyway. It's part of it. It just comes at the very end. The most basic piece of integrated pest management is to observe and monitor. So observe, this photograph here, those are egg casings in a rusty post. Buggers got in there. We want to scrape those things off, but just observe and monitor. The first intervention that you could do if you find yourself with spotted lanternflies or any other pest would be to just do nothing and keep observing and monitoring. I wouldn't recommend that with the lanternflies unless you really only have like one or two. But with some other bugs, it's the right thing to do. The next step is to remove mechanically. So you can use the vacuum cleaner, you can stomp on them, which if you want to stomp on them, here's an insider tip. Don't be behind them, because they do hop, right? They hop forward. So be in front of them. Yeah. So if they hop, they might like bounce off your belly or something, but you know, you'll get them. You can use a fly swatter, you can use your hands, other sorts of mechanical ways of dealing with them. Sticky bands with chicken wire around, that's a passive way of dealing with it. There are some really cool traps I'm going to show you. And then the next step would be to remove chemically. The first one I have here, this is actually more of a mechanical solution because you aren't spraying a chemical on the plant, but there is a chemical involved because it's a biodegradable solution. And then the next one that you could do would be spraying with a biodegradable solution. So one more table I want to show you before we get to some more nitty-gritty with videos and tutorials. This is again from Penn State, and this is IPM, what to do at different points of the year. So you can see where we are now. We're in July, we're going into August. These are the 2 months where you're not really going to find much in eggs. But starting in September, we want to keep an eye out for egg casings and be scraping those off. We can be using mechanical methods, contact insecticides. Those are things like insecticidal soap, things that you spray on them. And then the systemic, those are those two chemicals that are injected into the tree, the soil, that sort of thing. The systemic ones are those that the pests eat or ingest, and they mess with their neurology and kill them that way. So that's still included in their table here. All right, this is a video starring my co-host today, Victoria.
All right, so what I'm doing first is putting some of these salsets soap into this bucket, just a little bit. And then also some rubbing alcohol, because I find that it kills the lanternflies faster if there's some other chemical that can penetrate into their bodies. And then just fill it with water. It doesn't have to be full, but enough that they can actually drown in it. They're not just going to crawl right up the slide. Okay, so the situation that's going on here is often what I see on vines, especially like invasive weedy vines in my yard. So the technique I'm using here is how I would adjust that. It might be a little different if you're finding them on big tree trunks where you can't get under them the way I'm about to get under them. Trying to scoop this under them. This is a little tricky because it's a little too tall. I'm going to try and lift this up and then smack them in. No, usually this would be right under it, and when they're threatened, they fall down usually. So that's why I'm trying to get under them. But this worked sort of. I got quite a few in here that you can see they're going to drown and die.
Yeah, so that is our preferred method, and I want to credit Victoria with the addition of the rubbing alcohol. I think that's a really great idea. I have just been doing something with, Sal Suds or another Dr. Brenner's soap and just dumping them into a bucket or something like that. But the alcohol, I think, is really smart. They'll kick the bucket even more quickly. If we want to think about passive, sticky bands have been found to be effective. But really, the duct tape just doesn't work as well. I know it would be cool if, there were this easy at-home solution that would be as effective. The sticky tape that you buy in the store is it's just better suited to this. But bycatch, that is other insects and birds getting caught in it. You want to try to avoid that. You should check it just about weekly, but they work. So they're definitely a good idea.
They didn't really make me want to climb her tree anymore.
Then she found out she might not ever be able to climb her tree anymore if the spotted lanternfly did what it does and kills trees. So she got to work.
And so this is my trap. It uses their natural instinct to go up against them.
When the bugs start crawling up the tree, they hit the foil ring.
They'll see this tunnel eventually, and when they see the tunnel, they will go up through there.
They do it because it's the only way to keep moving up. They end up here.
So I see here in my hands, there's netting here. So the spotted lanternflies here, they can't feed onto the tree.
So they die about 24 hours later. She killed 1,200 of them in 2 weeks with just 2 traps.
I don't have to spray them with any type of pesticide. I don't have to do anything to them. I don't have to squash them.
So she's pretty awesome. I really love that ingenuity. And this is really the sort of cutting edge of dealing with spotted lanternflies at this point. It's a circle trap. There are a number of tutorials out there. I have some links to share with you. Here's an example of the stuff that you need. Some window screening, some little pieces of wood, plastic jugs. Most people have Ziploc bags, probably have some different wire and duct tape and other sorts of things around. They recommend using a hot glue gun. There's other ways you could do that sort of thing, or you could buy them. They are called circle weevil traps. They were first discovered and used with pecans. So let's get to these resources.